educational resources, they're being held behind a gate, behind a paywall. A lot of these resources are at a very high price. They're not always available to students depending on where they live. They might not even be accessible if they live too far away from those necessary resources. So what we've aimed to do at the nonprofit is to provide those educational resources, and all of our virtual programs are free. And we do that intentionally because we want to lower that barrier to entry, because children, they deserve educational resources. Growing up, I wasn't always the smartest, right? Like, I needed help in math class. I needed help learning to write essays. So I needed to pay, my parents did, a lot of money for me to develop those skills and abilities. But we definitely think that these are skills and abilities that the next generation should definitely have. They should have access to those resources without needing to wonder, can I afford the next meal? Should I buy shoes next semester? Or should I send my child to math class or a math tutor?
What's I've always said struck me about you, and I really want to understand, was that you're today working for a not-for-profit organization.
Yes.
And usually when you get into working for a not-for-profit, the cause is the currency, I say. You know, like, that's your pay, the cause, right? But, you know, passion, fine, every day, it's a grind, you know? And I was just amazed to see most guys that I see that are like, when did you come out of university, you said?
I'm actually still finishing up university. Yeah.
All right. So you're finishing up university.
Yeah.
I remember when I was finishing up university, I would say what I was like was an aspiring emperor, like I call him. You know, like, I'm going to take over the world, I'm going to make billions, and I'm going to own this, and I'm going to drive that. And those were my aspirations, if I remember back. And I meet you, and I'm like, I needed to have met you like a long time ago to guide me on a couple of things. And you're coming out of school and you're thinking about the things that you're thinking about. And I'm wondering to myself, wait a second, what part did you decide or make a choice on that, you know, you had choices as you were coming along? And that's what I'm really, really curious about. Like, if you were to go back and think, Nioumon, when he was, whatever it was, like, I don't know, 5, 8, when you had a memory of, you know, when you start formulating, this is what I want to do or what I want to be in the future. Mm-hmm. What were your aspirations back then?
Yeah, I think that was a great way to frame it, because when you go back to your childhood aspirations, I definitely think it goes to, you want to make your family proud. You want to do something that you're proud about as well.
Right.
But overall, for me, I wanted to make sure that what I'm doing has a strong impact for the world. When I was a kid, my whole...
You're 8 years old and you're saying this. Come on.
I mean, like, I was very...
Did you not see that cool car go by and be like, I want one of those?
I did. I saw that. But something that was much cooler to me was, I mean, growing up personally, was seeing companies like Apple, companies like Google. Those were just coming out, becoming stronger as I was growing up.
Okay.
But seeing that they're able to provide a service, provide something to the world that was so impactful, that's what really inspired me. I wanted to make sure the efforts and things that I put my time into, especially even as a kid, were going to come out to be something impactful. Now, I didn't know what that was going to be right as I was a child. I thought I might just have to go work for Google or work for Apple.
Okay.
Right? But as I progressed through my high school and through my university education, I realized that there was a lot more opportunity than what was just facing me right off.
I mean, if I was a kid today, I wouldn't be thinking about working at Apple. I just want to have an Apple. You know, like, he's just like, oh, I got the latest, whatever iPhone it is or whatever's out there nowadays. And I can't see myself thinking about working somewhere or doing something impactful. I find myself, when I'm 8, a lot in the moment. And when I'm looking at your generation as well, and I'm thinking it's so much different for you, because when you're, first of all, I don't even think that you get a lot of time to think and to look up, because you're always looking down at something, looking at a screen and just following the next click. And there's always something been presented to you to look at. So there's no time really for you to not look at anything and start thinking for yourself, right? You're of that. You're of that sort of era.
I completely agree.
You're in that era. So do you remember this? Like always having screens around you, always having something else to look at. You referenced Google and Apple.
Yes.
So you always have these. People call it media, or it's very close to you, and so you're always got something flashing in front of you. For me, it was a car that would go by once in a while. Yes. Man, if I had an Apple in front of me, an iPhone, I don't know if I'd ever look up from it. Because I would always be like, whatever that dopamine hit they call it, or whatever they call it, like this.
You'd be enamored with it.
Yeah, that's it. I'd be enamored. So you had that.
Definitely growing up, like you have to have appreciation for these things. So like I had an iPod.
Yeah.
I love music.
Yeah.
So like that iPod was everything. Especially when they had it with a touch screen that came out. You could download apps on it.
It's like an extension of you.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. You interact with it more than you interact with the people around you.
So you had that.
Yes, I did grow up with that. But I think
you keep saying you. I'm thinking, when are you going to start saying I? But like, you know, but like that was you too.
I definitely grew up with that.
And so you had this always around you. And if I understand it right, like that's the mission on the other side, is to like keep you looking at this thing, because the more you look at it, it's ching to the other, views for this and so on for that. And that's the business, fine, so be it. That's how they can be impactful too at the same time. That's how you can get a great message out there. So there's a huge upside to all that. I'm not hating on it. What I'm saying is, when you're there as looking at it as Nioumon, where do you get the time to focus off of that and start focusing on what you want to do? How did you do that?
Yeah, for sure. That's a great question. I have to give credit to my parents. I have to give credit to my sisters and my older sisters and my social surroundings.
What did they say?
So my older sisters in particular,
okay.
I have two older sisters. One is 14 years older than me and one is 17 years older than me.
Okay.
So they're very close to my age compared to my parents. And they were able to also guide me through a lot of those challenges. So as I was growing up, they would tell me certain things, like when I became 13 and I was interacting with Facebook and Instagram for the first time. They set clear boundaries that the internet is forever. The internet, like things like this, you shouldn't really be commenting too much. Be careful of like what you like, because you leave a digital footprint. And I remember like thinking to myself, like that was really good advice when I was getting into technology and into social media, because I think social media itself is much more attention grasping than the actual device. When I use my device, you can go back to the home screen and you like exit an app and you can choose which next app you want to go into.
Right.
But social media tends to want to keep you in their app for as long as possible. Always updating itself, always giving itself new features, different apps copying each other's features. So by having two great older sisters to guide me through that, who were very technologically advanced, they love technology just as much as me. They were able to set boundaries with me that like your real life is something that is much more tangible and important than what you're just interacting with online. So like,
but you don't know this at the time.
I didn't know this. You're right.
Right. So why would you believe them?
Because I trusted them enough to know that like it didn't maybe make an impact right when I was 8 to 13. But as I grew up, you can see people and how their interactions with social media has led possibly them down a different path. And it makes you more cautious. So some people who comment obscene things, comment their feelings and emotions right as they're feeling it, that might stick with them and impact them later in life. So I saw those effects in the earlier years as I was going through that. And it made me think to myself, I need to be cautious. Like even personally right now, I tend to not comment or like things on social media too much. And my social presence isn't necessarily that high, but I do interact with it because it is important to understand what's relevant and to be in touch with those cultural aspects.
So you have, you don't attach value to how many likes you get or how many friends you have on, like, in your network. But like when you're growing up, when you're in that zone, I'm just thinking about when I was in that same zone, how others around me processed what is valuable had a little bit of an impact on me. And so, yes, you have two older sisters. That's a key. That's
Personally.
for sure.
Yeah.
You got two older sisters, but you got millions of other people on the other side that are your age, that are you, like a reflection in a way, you know? And there's almost like a peer pressure, if you will, that like, did you see this? And they're all kind of talking about it. But it used to be that they'd be talking about it in person. Now they're talking about it online or in social media. So they're connecting. And by you following this way, you're not so connected to them.
Yeah.
So you're a little left out.
That is
and you feel left out. And who wants to feel left out?
Personally, like, I always valued the opinions of those who are older than me.
Okay.
I think that's something that has been with me since growing up. And this is some advice that I'd give to everyone in this generation who is my age or even younger, which is that people who are your age are struggling with the exact same things that you are, or that you, like I am. And so because of that, going to them for advice or going to them for necessarily their perspective might not help you out of that situation as much as someone who is older than you, who has seen a little bit more of the world, and who can give you advice on that problem from an outside perspective. Because I absolutely agree with you that being left out or not being up on social trends can definitely isolate you from your peers. But especially when you're going through like different like things you need to navigate on social media, or choosing, like a great example is choosing whether to have a public profile or a private profile. Most people might want a public one because it allows them to be easily reached by a mass audience. Anyone can follow me and everyone can see the things that I'm posting. You can get more likes, more engagement. But having a private profile might give you more peace of mind of who's actually seeing your content. And that depends on the person you are and what you're using these tools for. But definitely growing up, I would say that always seek advice from those who are slightly older than you. They've most likely been through that position that you're currently in, and they're able to give you advice that has helped them get through that problem, compared to people who are your age, who are probably just going to echo the exact feelings that you're also feeling in that situation.
I haven't heard a better counter to peer pressure than that one all this time. That is like, that makes so much sense. But as much as it makes sense when you say it like that, it's not what we do, isn't it? It's like we often still, it's like almost the other way around. Let me give you the counter to your counter. They don't understand what I'm going through. What I'm going through is different now than when they went through it when they were going through it. My situation's different. The one who understands me is the one who's sitting right where I'm sitting.
I would have to agree that, especially because technology is advancing more and more. Like, I'll give a for instance.
Yeah.
When I was growing up, text messaging was just a normal, like, it was new, but when you sent a text, you couldn't change it. But in this new generation, especially kids that are growing up with iPads and iPhones, this is high-tech stuff. So they're actually able to delete messages or edit messages. This provides them a whole new level of maybe anxiety than I had when I was growing up.
Oh, I didn't think of that.
Because this kid might have sent something and he might know or she might know that it could be misinterpreted. So they'll quickly go to edit or delete it. Okay. But even that anxiety of should I edit or should I delete this is something I never really had to face. So you make a good point that there is a lot of change.
It's always like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's always like that. We say to our elders or whatever, listen, what you went through was different. It was easier for you.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Right. And so for me, who understands me are my peers. And so we look at our peers, and you're right. Actually, I agree with you 100% that they actually don't know the consequence of what they're doing yet. Mm-hmm. The people who've walked before us have at least seen consequences, so they can tell you, look, that was a mistake for me. That was a correct move for me. So what they have is consequences. What these people who are at my point right now don't have are consequences, are actual results. But they do have the power of empathy on their side. And it's this kind of, I feel like it's a struggle, between trusting somebody who has empathy or somebody who has experience, between the two. But anyway, I found that an interesting way for you to just lean. You lean on, hey, somebody's just got more experience, so I'm going to trust experience over empathy. I find that a really interesting point. Nobody had to sit there and convince you on it.
I mean, it
Did you at some point in time say, you guys are out to lunch, I just got to do what I want to do?
Personally, you do have to take risks as a person, right?
Right.
You have to make your
own choices.
Your
own person.
Yeah. You're going to always, part of life is having mistakes, but learning from those mistakes.
Right.
And ideally, if you've gotten that advice from somebody who's older than you and you still choose to not listen to it and you go ahead, it's not always going to be that you're going to face those same consequences. But often cases, if you do, you realize that maybe that person was able to actually guide me and I should think things through more. It helps develop your own critical thinking skills of what might happen if I choose to do these things instead of just that instant gratification of going and doing the thing.
I remember, this idea of, call it isolation, when I was at that age between 8 to 13. And I've talked about it before when I'd be I wasn't one of the cool kids. I felt like I wasn't one of the cool kids. And I wanted to be. Did you ever feel that after, having made that choice, right? Okay, so now you're not as connected. You're a little bit more isolated by choice. Mm-hmm. But there's still this feeling of wanting to belong, of wanting to fit in. We're social human beings. Or did you have no such feeling about that at all?
There were definitely
wanting to fit in.
There were definitely cliques and different groups of people in your elementary school, in your high school, and university as well.
Right.
But personally, as I was growing up, I just wanted to be Nioumon. I just wanted to be me. And what that meant was I needed to do things that I was proud of. So I could like cars and I could go talk with my friends about cars or basketball or different cultural topics that we might have seen on social media. But other people might have taken it to a different level. They might have felt that they needed to be active about their stance on social media about something particular. That was where I kind of drew my line, where I felt that there were certain things that were personal to me that I could keep within myself, and I didn't need to always engage in the public sphere with. I wanted to be someone that, going back to your point of popularity, I didn't need to be popular, but I wanted to be friends with everyone. I wanted to make sure that I could hang out with that group of people and another group that was maybe a little bit quieter, and everyone in between. That was just the person I was growing up.
You are. So as Nioumon is being himself, right? And you're thinking about wanting to make, do something on a certain kind of a scale. That I think a lot of people can relate to. Like, we want to grow. We want to grow to like the furthest point that we can possibly grow. A lot of times that is defined by things like, right, like how much money we make. Mm-hmm. Again, the quantity of things, I would say, the quantity of things. And in fact, it doesn't take a long time before that becomes the definition of success around us. Mm-hmm. So having more of something. Did you see that as a choice in a pathway? Did you sort of formulate that in, and then sort of also look at an alternative and say, okay, well, not that, because obviously, like where you are today, that decision came at some point in time.
Mm-hmm. Definitely, I would say that in my older teenage years and in my early university years, I definitely measured success with how much money you're making, or maybe what car somebody was driving. You definitely had those aspirations. Like, I want to be in a nicer car. Maybe it's a house. Maybe like I want to be in a bigger house. But something that did change was as I did learn more about the nonprofit that I'm currently at, YRES, York Region Educational Services, I was greatly overtaken by what you're actually able to do as a human. I never considered a nonprofit the path that I would go down, but
Sorry, you just said something that you could do as a human. Say that again.
So I never thought that you could, as a human, just go down the path of philanthropy. That was never something I really saw as an option until I was made aware of it.
Okay.
When I engaged in philanthropy and with the nonprofit I currently am at, I noticed that I was now measuring success with what I was able to do tangibly for the people around me. How many students were able to help, how many communities were in, or how many families and parents were able to provide assistance to. That became much more of a driving factor of why I'm doing the work that I'm doing than any money or a car or a house, because those things will come. But personally, like as a human being on this earth, I definitely believe, like for me, seeing that impact that I'm able to make is something that will outlast any car that I have or any sort of thing that I buy on this earth. I definitely appreciate those results that have come.
It's interesting. So it's still quantities,
Mm-hmm.
but just a different, I don't know, I call it currency.
Yes.
instead of say money or cars, it's people and lives.
Exactly.
And that's your currency.
Exactly. Because
is that fair to say? Like,
I would say that's 100% accurate. Yeah.
Because I'm studying this more and more, and when I say studying, just studying by talking to people, and I call them life credits at the moment. I don't have a better way of calling it.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm like, if I had to bank something, and you talk about it outlasting.
Yes.
It's not what we learn every day, though. Like, I don't remember going to a class.
Yeah.
Like, I remember going to economics. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah.
I remember going to accounting and we talk about profit. Mm-hmm. I remember going to business classes and we talk about pricing models. Mm-hmm. And we talk about marketing to what end? Mm-hmm. We don't talk about marketing for not-for-profits and changing human lives. We talk about marketing for driving sales up. And in everything we studied, and that I studied anyway, I never saw an option to go, this kind of currency, change lives. I never studied that. I never even saw the option to study that. Did you?
No, because like I've had many jobs through my university career.
Right.
And again, they're mainly focused on profits, on the bottom line.
Right.
And all of those things that you've mentioned about what you've learned in school, that's all applicable even to nonprofits.
100%.
And I definitely think that there's a disconnect between what people think of a nonprofit and what it actually is, because you do need business professionals who understand marketing, accounting, and all the things in between to help that become as successful as possible.
But the purpose is different.
The purpose is different,
right?
Exactly, yeah.
But we never learn about purpose. We never talk about that kind of stuff. So where did you start figuring? Is this what I'm trying to understand, right? It's like when I came out, that was purpose, right? Yeah. Like as I'm forming, and our years in university when we're studying, our minds are just like, we're like sponges, and we are accepting like what goes on in our university years as like, this is like, we are profound thinkers now, and we are, we know what's what because we're in university and this is where it's all defined. So we're smart people, and that's when purpose is all figured out for us. So when we're in there and we're not learning about making impact on life, and we are learning about profit and driving up about the bottom line, where do you get the space to start saying, no, not that?
Definitely, I would say it was through just trying a variety of different positions and different jobs. With my school's co-op program, I was able to be fortunate enough, and I use that word fortunate because not many people have the opportunity to go work for a nonprofit or an education company.
So you that's where you touched it.
Yes,
first time.
Okay. And similar to most people, I wanted to make the biggest impact for the company when I first started.
When you were going to there was a choice. Were there only choices to go to not-for-profit? No. So you had choices even then. What appealed to you then about the not-for-profit versus going somewhere else where they have better tech? You know how it is in not-for-profits, right? Like in these other Googles and Apples, they're the leaders of things. So you want to grow, you want to be around the best knowledge, the most current tech, the most, where they're balling, It's not with not-for-profits, is it?
See, that's exactly what I thought for myself as well.
Okay.
When I've been at different positions for-profit companies.
Okay, so you were in other positions.
I have been, yeah,
okay.
Previously. When I worked at for-profit companies, you get very tunnel vision on what's best for the company and the outcomes for the company. But
explain that. What does that mean?
As in the bottom line, is what you're doing going to be the best decision for the bottom line of the company? That's the
and bottom line meaning
the money that they make.
Okay.
But as I took on my first position at a nonprofit, I realized that my opportunity was vastly greater than any for-profit company I've been at. And the main difference is that I believe with nonprofit companies, they actually care a lot about the individuals that they employ or the ones that volunteer for them. They go above and beyond with appreciation for somebody taking out time from their days, weeks, months, in order to provide their efforts for these greater projects, for the community, for any social change, anything that it might be. And what I noticed was the main difference in terms of opportunity was nonprofits engage a lot with for-profit companies.
Right.
So this is the biggest difference that I noticed. So when I started at a nonprofit company, the main difference was they trusted me. They asked me, what did I want to take out from my entire experience here? And I was very honest. I said I wanted leadership experience and management experience. And they put me on a track to not only get that experience, but develop my cross-functionality skills with different teams such as HR, marketing, grant writing, and a variety of different positions. So not only did that help strengthen my own resume, my own career, because I'm understanding what field do I really want to go in. But on top of that, by being a part of such a diverse team, we're reaching out to for-profit companies all over the general area that we operate in. And by doing this, I'm able to make connections with those for-profit companies as well. And this has just been a a great learning experience for me. It's been more opportunity than any for-profit company I've been at, because when you join a company that is for-profit and you have a specific role, they ideally want you to be in that role, get really good at it, and stay in that role for as long as possible. But nonprofits, they're always changing. They always are trying to do new projects. They're always looking for new opportunities with different for-profit companies that might want to donate or collaborate in some sort of way. And this allows you to meet a variety of different people as well. And just personally for me, this has allowed me to understand where I want to go with my career. And that's what I think a very strong value from nonprofits, what they've given me.
So you've seen kind of like both. You're not just speaking from a point of view of not having seen the alternatives. You talked about your career. Do you think that this is like maybe just a phase, like it's a stepping stone, and then ultimately you're going to get back into, call it the for-profit currency world?
Truthfully, I actually see my own purpose. I'm only speaking for me.
Yeah.
But I see my own purpose in life ultimately once I can just sustainably live, whatever that means. I know my mortgage is paid for. Right. I don't need a fancy car, but I know that I can make my car payments. My kids can eat food. Once I'm at that level, I fully understand that I want to take any excess of resources and put it right back into philanthropic work. I truly believe that the more you're able to give others, your community, even people around the world, that's a true purpose of being human. I think that it's very satisfying and gratifying. So it might be a selfish reason. I'm doing it to not necessarily make myself feel better, but I feel like it's the right thing to do. Right. And it makes me feel amazing by doing it. Right.
But isn't that what it's all about? Like, even when we drive the nice car, it's to feel amazing. To have these things, it's to feel amazing.
Very true.
And is there something wrong with feeling amazing?
No,
it's great to feel amazing. You feel good. And that's the interesting part as well. I think you just talked about being able to give more as a way of feeling good versus being able to get more to feel good. I gotta say, again, to have come to that point to start thinking that way at such a stage in life, it feels like you've skipped a bunch of steps, right? And I keep thinking to myself, though, you've experienced and you've grown up in and been surrounded by all the same elements. And what I'm trying to figure out is, what is it that didn't stick with you that started sticking with others? So what would you say now when you kind of compare yourself or think about how you processed? Earlier on, you sort of said you were paying attention to the consequences of what others were dealing with when they, for example, spoke when they were feeling a certain emotion and didn't control that. So you were observant about that. What were the other things that you noticed that you're like, listen, I don't want to end up like that? Were there any other observations that you made? It might not have even had to be experiences of your own. I feel like you're a very observant person. You've probably been told that a number of times. So what else did you observe?
Truthfully, it's just the world will speak to you. We take in a lot of media, and maybe I am observant, but I believe that this is something that is within everyone. They have the ability to be just as observant.
I agree.
But understanding media, understanding history, world history, understanding just different parts of even how the world works.
What do you mean?
I mean, as in like in the political sphere, understanding that governments might not always, or big businesses might not always have your best interest at heart.
Why would you say that?
I would say that because it can be true. You can definitely see examples in history that a bigger company might forego the right choice in order to maximize their profits. This is something that I've seen in just numerous companies I've worked for, but also you hear about it in the local news.
Sure. And then another person says, everyone's doing it.
Exactly.
So what are you going to do about it?
So that's where you have to be observant by yourself. You have to say that I understand that maybe this big company is doing this sort of thing. And if that's okay for you, that's perfectly fine, because that company ultimately might provide a good value to their clientele or their customer base, but they might not do it in the most ethical way. But if you're okay with that, that's completely fine. But if you want to be someone who is, I guess, a little bit more like me, and I'm only speaking about me, when I'm observant, I want to make sure that the time and effort that I put into the things that I'm accomplishing ultimately have a greater good impact. That's what has also led me down a philanthropic route into going into a nonprofit organization.
The greater good route. I just want to sort of think through that a little bit, because it's a constant. It keeps coming up, and you refer to it as philanthropy, and the greater good impact on humans, and the sort of things that you and your organization are working with today. It's as much as it doesn't have it's not sexy, it's not like our stock jumped this much today and we're flying around in these kind of planes and, going to these kind of places. There's the glitz is not there, right? I find, or what's the glitz? I guess I should ask.
It's needed. It's needed for the communities. Those are the two words that I want to put together. It's needed, because especially with what we do, we work with a lot of families that are immigrating into our country, and we provide low or free educational resources to those families within the communities within York Region. But we understand that this is something that's needed, because as we've seen the trends lately, childcare or even excess educational resources are becoming they're being held behind a gate, behind a paywall. That's what we've noticed as we've experienced these trends after COVID, especially, that a lot of these resources are at a very high price. They're not always available to students depending on where they live. They might not even be accessible if they live too far away from those necessary resources. So what we've aimed to do at the nonprofit is to provide those educational resources virtually, and all of our virtual programs are free. And we do that intentionally because we want to lower that barrier to entry, because children, they deserve educational resources. I'll speak for myself. Yeah. Growing up, I wasn't always the smartest, right? Like, I needed help in math class. I needed help learning to write essays. So I needed to pay, my parents did, a lot of money for me to develop those skills and abilities. But we definitely think that these are skills and abilities that the next generation should definitely have. They should have access to those resources without needing to wonder, can I afford the next meal? Should I buy shoes next semester? Or should I send my child to math class or a math tutor? So that's why we have our virtual classes all free, because it also lowers the barrier for any parents who might need to drive very far. This is virtual. You're able to log in at a very reasonable time from your home and just participate and access those resources.
So then, working in a not-for-profit manner has glitz. And there are, you can call it like, I always say that that's the difference between profitability and prosperity, whereas like what you're working on is prosperity, and prosperity is worth way more than profit. So it has some elements of profit in there, but it's prosperity, and it's just a bigger win. So it's kind of like, even I feel like, and not to make like comparisons, but okay, yeah, it's a comparison, so be it. If it is, it is. But it's kind of like if it was in baseball, playing for profit is like the little leagues, but playing for prosperity is like the World Series. It's almost like flipped. But when I grew up, I always thought the for-profit world was where it's at. And you're saying to me, the way you're putting it, and I'm reading it, I'm starting to see the parallels now. Like you're upskilling, you're being challenged, you're problem solving. It's not like you're dealing with a small little problem. You just described something that's really huge, and trying to put even a dent into something like that is an accomplishment, let alone actually moving the needle on it. So there are ways to be able to really say you're successful.
Yes.
And you have measurable ways. And you look at those measurements, those needles moving. And it's very gratifying. It's very fulfilling. And they're huge wins.
I would say it's a tangible win as well.
It's a tangible win.
Yeah, because like you can get a paycheck for doing hard work, and that's really great. You'll feel success, like you've contributed to the company, you're getting paid for your time, you're a valued employee. You can get most of those benefits, but also you can see the gratification of the actual impact that you're making. You can see the faces of the children that you work with that are improving week by week as they come to your class, knowing that they're developing confidence within themselves. These might be students who didn't necessarily have access to these resources, so they believe that they're just not good at particular subjects or particular skills. But as they come, they develop those skills, and then you see them growing, and you see them actually developing like a happiness and confidence within themselves. And then you realize like you're helping their parents out. Like not only did you help that one child, but they have two parents, ideally, and you're helping them out as well. And then the scope of the impact that you're making just continues to get bigger and bigger as you continue. It's tangible, yeah.
It is tangible. I saw this comic once of a guy, imagine this, standing, leaning on like an exotic car, right? And he's kind of like your boss. And he says to you, hey, you look, Nioumon, you did really, really well this year. And if you do really, really well next year, I'm going to get another one of these. Like it's tangible. The look on, not just a look on, like it's not just a look on a face, it's a change in a life. And the change in the life, you say, is more rewarding than a pat on the back from, say, management going, thanks for making us all this profit. For our shareholders, good job. Here are your next targets. It really does feel different, doesn't it?
It's night and day. It is night and day, because most of the time, because we also operate summer camps as well, and March break camps, PA day camps, a variety of in-person events. And this is, again, a struggle for a lot of parents. They have to pay high fees. Like, for example, a typical summer camp ranges between $500 to $600 per week per child. We offer our summer camps at between $185 to $195 a week. That's a major difference.
Huge.
Because people need that. Parents don't always have the ability to take summers off and look after their kids all summer. They need these resources, but they might not always be able to afford it. And honestly, those in-person events are something that I love even more, because you're interacting with these children, you're teaching them things, you're helping them develop their social skills. And at the end of it all, these are memories that they take with them.
Because I'm going to switch gears here a little bit.
For sure.
Because in this not-for-profit world, in any world that we decide to work in, especially the, call it impact world, right? The problems are so big. Like they really are huge. Speaking of the quantity of things, it's a really, really big challenge. Like in a way, almost daunting, almost overwhelming. Like when you see the amount of demand versus supply, okay? You see it. It doesn't take a long time to notice it. So, and you say you want to make a difference. Do you ever get this feeling, I know I've felt it, that while you're sitting here call it putting out this one fire, 3 more are starting. And it's kind of almost like the wave, it's bigger than something you can even surf. Like it's about to, if it keeps going like the way that it's going, it's almost pointless. You get what I'm trying to say? Like the problem is sometimes so big, and you look around and you're like, why aren't more people doing something here? Right? You feel that moment of like you're screaming inside. How does not everybody not notice this? Why are more people, getting in line to change this? There's that moment. So there's 2 kind of thoughts I'd love to hear from you is, D8, when you notice that and you feel this frustration, it's extremely frustrating. What you're doing is a great thing. You don't really need to even sell it, right? It's a great thing. You're helping somebody.
Love you.
Yet you still got to get out there and beat the path, right, on raising money, on having donations being made. And there's someone sitting on the other side going, like completely disconnected from the situation. You're like, how do you not see this? It's super frustrating. Or maybe not for you. How do you deal with that frustration?
There's different ways to view it. You definitely,
because people just give up on that.
Yeah.
And they're like, you know what? Nobody cares.
Yeah. You definitely want to always be doing more. If you could solve the world's problems, if you really could, and it was that easy, everyone would want to do it. But the truth is that it's not that easy, and that it does take a lot of work. It wouldn't be possible without the numerous volunteers that always dedicate their time, come out and help. And then people on our end where we have to curate and train those volunteers, find partnerships that are strategic.
And then some of them leave.
Yeah, and those might be really foundational people that you might need.
Yeah.
But ultimately, you can't let it discourage you, because the wins that you have are much more meaningful than necessarily those frustrations that you might be facing. Because you have to realize, like, if this is something that I've chosen to do, or the people around me have chosen to come together to form this organization and participate in,
right.
You need to make sure that you're putting strategic people in place. So developing, like anybody who goes into a nonprofit realm, I would definitely say reach out to your local members of parliament or your local politicians,
right.
and make sure that you're developing connections with cities and different institutions within those cities, such as libraries and community centers as well.
Sure.
Because ideally, that starting place, you would have common ground. You would both want to be doing a similar thing for those communities.
Right.
And so when you bring your solutions to these problems to those influential people, and you are able to get even just a few of them to see your perspective, you jump ahead.
So what I'm referring to is, like, let's just say you want to build a house.
Oh, okay.
Okay. You toil, you sweat, you put in effort, and then one day you turn around and the house is built.
Okay.
It's done.
Yes.
You get what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Well, with this kind of a situation, you're sitting there toiling away, right? I feel sometimes. And then you look up and you turn around and you're like, there's no house. It hasn't been built. Nothing's being built. In fact, I've spent time and the problem has gotten bigger in time. So on one hand, there's this feeling of making little wins along the way. There's impact. You talked about changing a life.
Mm-hmm.
But I haven't even put a dent into the problem. And I'm really not making a difference.
I would say to that at that point, like, do you want a house? Like, at the end of it, because no one said it was going to be easy to build a house. And maybe the land that you're building on, it might not be as strong as you thought it was.
Yeah.
And things might start going awry.
You build and it falls. Build and it falls.
So at that point, you would have to...
What do you say to yourself to keep going? So on one hand, we just talked about making a difference as a currency.
Yes.
On the other hand, we're realizing we're not making a difference or enough of a difference.
Mm-hmm. I would definitely, just to that point, I would say the nonprofit...
Unless you've never felt this before.
I haven't felt too strongly about this, but I've dealt with people who have.
Yeah.
They've definitely come to me with these exact concerns. And to them, I asked them, do you enjoy building the house? Do you want a house at the end of it? Or maybe you want an apartment, you want something else. Really assess the values that you have as a person. Because we're not here to force you to build a house. But if you want a house and you enjoy building a house and you want a house that looks like this, has these features in it, it might take a long time to build. You might need to change where you are. You might need to adapt and continue to progress through the challenges. But at the end of the day, you have to realize like every little thing that you do during that day, during that process, laying down bricks, setting the concrete or foundation, any little thing that you do, you are a step closer to your goal. I personally, I don't necessarily,
You don't have that same feeling.
Yeah, I don't have that same feeling.
Why? That's the part that I'm trying to understand.
Yeah.
I think I can understand why that is, but I just want to hear it from your perspective, and I didn't want to put words into your mouth as to kind of why you think this way. Like, I really want to hear it from you. So I'm just wondering, you said earlier on, and I wonder if the question is, do you enjoy building or do you enjoy having a house? Is it in the actual act that there's the win, or is it in the actual result that there's a win? And it must mean to me that when I hear you think about it, is that you put so much more value in the act, and there it stays right there versus the consequence. And the act is worth more than the consequence. Is that fair? Is that a fair way to look at it from your perspective? Is that how you're seeing it?
Definitely.
And that way you never even think about those things, and it's not part of the equation even.
I mean, you have to always adapt. There's going to be problems. You have to adapt with them. But I completely agree with you that for me personally, the joy is in that journey, is in establishing new programs, new things that we can do to not only be relevant, but to help and that like an impact the communities that we do.
And you're obviously a leader. You're working on leadership development for where you're going. So you're on that path. You're going to get challenged at some point in time when you talk to politicians, when you talk to the people who you're making partnerships with to see these causes come to fruition. There will be a question on, well, where's the result, right? Like, what difference has actually been made? And sometimes you might point to, well, look at this, like we laid this many bricks, there's this. But they're seeing like the problem. You're seeing, the things that have been done. And the problem itself keeps growing. What do you think are some of like the problems, like roots, call it, after having gone through this, that you're looking at like, okay, you know what, we need to hit it here. And this will actually tip the scale. What do you think those kind of things are in your experiences that you've had? You've been at it for now a little while, and you're doing really well with it. You're making a difference, no doubt about it.
Thank you.
100%. You still see yourself on this path, and you're going to get onto like the next big challenge. So what's the next big challenge? Like at first, it's kind of like, I got to teach this one kid, right? Make a difference in one life. Then you're like, listen, we got to build something that's going to make a difference in 100 lives. So what are the kind of things now that you're looking at that are your next challenges?
That's a good question. Definitely, personally, for what we do, we are focused in education.
Yeah.
But what we've noticed is that there's a big disconnect within not only education, but the skills people are developing. Intrapersonal skills, communication skills, teamworking skills, having the discipline to start a project and follow through with it despite the challenges. For us, we've actually just recently launched a free high school and grade 6 to 8 workshop to help students with the transition into high school or transition into university, but ultimately help them build those social skills that they need to be successful when they've progressed into those institutions. That's something that we see as an up-and-coming challenge, just understanding the social challenges that this new generation has, especially after the COVID pandemic. There's a big change in people's understanding of a workplace or understanding of how they should perform in group work or team activities. So we've launched programs to help combat this and teach them skills and coping mechanisms and anything that might be needed to help deal with their stress or any challenges.
What about for you? I mean, yeah, what about for you? What are like when you look at it going, hey, this is my next challenge? Like at one point in time, it was, you know, we talked about that, like at 8 and 13, you're looking at it saying, you know, put the screen down, you know, live in the real world. You know, what's next? You personally right now, when you're looking at it, I'm curious to understand what you see as like your present kind of challenge, your present struggle. Or are you always this calm and you have absolutely nothing bothering?
No, definitely. I do have my own challenges.
Yeah. What's your challenge?
Personally, for me, it's understanding how to take what I've learned so far and everything that I've built and learned so far and replicate it, continue it, and expand it even further. So right now, the nonprofit that we're very locally based. We mainly focus on York region.
Sure.
So I love what I'm doing, but a challenge for me is expanding beyond York region. I would love to see the efforts that I'm putting in affect on a national level or even international and become even larger. That's currently the things that I'm looking at, that I forecast as my future. Like that's where I'd like to be. I'd like to be part of an organization that has a national impact.
And what's the fear or worry along the way? Like, is there?
Yeah, there's plenty of fears. Like even the organization I'm currently with, expanding nationally would indicate to us a large investment in other provinces. Even if you go into the States, you have to understand their political landscape. You have to even assess whether what we're going to be doing is relevant in those areas. You have to assess the programs that we currently offer. Are they even going to translate well to those demographics?
No, what if they don't?
And exactly, we have to develop a whole new curriculum. We have to develop a new volunteer base in all of these areas. We have to set up shop and basically get our brand out there. And these are very daunting challenges.
Yeah, like what if you can't find enough resources?
Exactly. What if people just don't learn about us? What if they're not receptive to us?
Right.
But ultimately, does that mean that we shouldn't try? That's something that's very important to me. Like I personally have one life to live. And I think that to do the most with my life is to participate in these challenges. Don't be afraid of new obstacles or things like that might come in your way, because you've been able to do it once. 5 years ago, there was no YRES, but now we're able to have over 1,000 volunteers.
Wow.
We've been able to impact over 400 families across York region, and host a variety of virtual and in-person programs that have great attendance. And this is all a matter of hard work. So it's about now replicating that, understanding those new demographics. What do they need? They might not need languages. They might need personal development courses. It might be an older audience.
So when you first got started 5 years ago on this, it was a what if this doesn't happen? And you were sitting in almost the exact same place with your next challenge, but this challenge 5 years ago. And you got moving, and here you are. Is this when you look back on it and you take yourself back to 5 years ago, the fears were the same, the challenges were similar in nature, except you were even further back than you are now, before you could take on a bigger challenge.
Mm-hmm.
How did you keep yourself motivated? Because there must have been times where you're going forward and then you're not feeling the progress happening.
Mm-hmm. Definitely you could have roadblocks that come up. But your question is how
when those roadblocks came along, they seem like huge at that time, like impossible, right? Like at first, it's like we're trying, we're not making it happen. Or did it all just fall into place?
Just speaking personally for me, I don't want to speak for anybody else.
It's just you, yeah. But it's not even about the organization, right? Yeah.
I believe that people have been in my shoes before. People have gone through this before. Okay. They've succeeded. And they're going to go through it after me as well. I'm not the thing that's going to stop nonprofits if I fail.
Yeah.
Right. So I definitely believe that it can be achieved. I've seen it be achieved. There have been very large nonprofits that we can all think about right now, or charities that we can think about. So it's very possible. And it's just about when you think like, do you want this to happen? Are you going to put all of your efforts and attention and focus and abilities to making it happen? Or are you just going to be someone who wants to be on the sidelines and just watch it happen?
Wow. Did you, while you're doing this, was there ever a voice inside your head exactly that said, yeah, maybe you belong on the sideline, not on the field?
Personally, for me, I always wanted to be up front and center. I knew that like, I trust
That's pretty
myself.
Loud for a guy who speaks so softly.
I mean, I trust myself.
To see himself in the center of the field, really. That's awesome.
I trust myself.
That's good to know.
And I trust the people who have also been surrounding me as well. Like, there have been many people who have given me great advice, who have led me on the right direction. And again, this kind of goes back to trusting people who are older than you, or people who have gone through the similar experiences and things that they can inform you about. So personally, I knew that if I can educate myself well, if I can understand what the landscape of this is and how like the challenges other people have faced, I can thrive the best way that I can.
That's amazing. If somebody's sitting there right now thinking, because I think the thoughts that you hit on are felt very, very, very much by a lot of people. Somebody wants to make a difference. I mean, I haven't met a person who hasn't wanted to make a difference, actually, whether it's in their own lives, right? Or whether it's in the lives of others. And sometimes they're not sure just where to get started. Is that, you ever hear that?
Yeah.
Not sure what the next move is. Not sure how to even go about making this decision. And sometimes they even feel, I've talked to some who are like, well, what do I have to offer? Like me. Well, what do you ever had that thought, or what do you say to that?
Nobody starts off from the top. Nobody starts off being amazing. Just starting off in any field, in anything that you want to do. It can be weight loss. It can be a nonprofit. It can be a for-profit company. Any change that you want to make, the start is always the most difficult part.
Right.
So I would say personally, if you really want to start, find people in that sphere, shadow them, volunteer if it's a nonprofit. There's plenty of charities, plenty of nonprofits that are always willing to take volunteers. Just get in at the ground floor and soak up all the information that you can. Use it as a learning experience for yourself. And and that in itself, that's the difference that you can make. By being engaged in that work, by showing a little bit of initiative, you can definitely transfer from that ground floor level into a more specific role. Maybe you have been with that organization you've been volunteering with for a few months now. You can go to them and say like, hey, I really want to work on projects that relate to finance or marketing. And I bet they would be very willing to help give you that experience. And so you're not going to start off right at the top, but just taking that first step, if you believe in yourself, I think that those people can go far, the people that truly believe in themselves.
So that's my question now. Like the how is, you've clarified. Now some like the motivation step. You said if you believe in yourself. There are people who want to do something good, but don't believe in themselves.
That's honestly the biggest wall. That's the biggest challenge you're going to have. I can't necessarily help you get out of that because I've had my own challenges.
Right. So how do you start believing in yourself?
You just have to remember, I mean, personally for me, you have to remember the person that you are, everything that you've accomplished. You've had hard days. Like I say that to myself. I'm like, you've had hard days in the mirror, but you've gotten through them. This is nothing compared to those hard days. These challenges that you might be facing are nothing compared to those hard days. But nobody can force somebody to change. Me being here, there's no one magic piece of advice that I can give where the person is now going to magically be all in and focused. But it is a process. You have to remember that you've had harder days. And again, like, people have done this before you, and people will do this after you. Do you want to be one of those people who are part of this journey altogether?
That makes a lot of sense, actually, to me, when you say it like that. And this is now the last part, is that, so the how and you know, the motivation. What about timing? You know, sometimes I look at it and I'm like, I'll do it when I've done these things. I need to first have the mortgage under control. Like, to your example, you don't yet have those things under control completely, yet you're doing it still. So timing, people sort of like, when I accomplish these things, then I'll get to this part. But you're not doing it like that. So how did you start answering the question on the time is now?
I mean, I feel like I've been very blessed personally, because I still feel very young. And I feel that I've been introduced to these topics at a younger age to really allow me to focus in on a bigger picture of life. Like, I want to be giving back. I want to be involved in nonprofits. That's something I realized, I think, much earlier than other people. But
yeah, so that's what I'm actually curious about. Like, you talk about giving back, and I might say to myself, I have yet nothing. What am I going to give back? What do you have? You don't have $1 billion. What are you giving back?
I mean, just giving your time, giving your expertise. Like, you might think that you don't have expertise in certain things, but I guarantee you that just living up to 18 years on this earth, you have experience in quite a few things, whether it be your interests, such as working on cars, working on, I have friends that are very into filmmaking or even music production. Those just might be their hobbies, but that's definitely something that I can't do. And when it comes down the line and you're going to need help developing advertisements or developing different creatives, or even talking with that friend who's into cars, maybe organizing a car meet for charity. These are all things, you have more power than you realize. But going back to your question about when the right time is right now. If you believe in yourself, if you want to make a change, but you think that you have nothing to offer, the best thing you can offer is your creativity. Take something that you are passionate about. The example I just gave was cars. You might work on cars. That might mean you have a lot of other friends who have nice cars, or you've worked on some cars before. Organize a charity car show. Organize some sort of event. But even interacting with nonprofits or different companies, giving them these creative ideas and executing on them yourself, that's what you have to offer. If you want to be someone who comes right out the gate, you want to offer something, really focus on the things you have around you and how you can bring those together. That's the main thing.
Do you think it's possible that if somebody feels like literally I have nothing to offer, at least they can go and learn?
Of course, without a doubt. That goes back to getting in at the ground floor.
Right. Volunteering
your time. Really, like, you might not know what you want to do with your life, but getting in at the ground floor of really any company, even a bank or a nonprofit, you learn the different industries within that corporation. You learn what makes that entire business, how successful it is. And you can go from there to really understand what you have interests for. Maybe you have interests for marketing or HR or management, but you'll at least be exposed to those things by taking the first step and getting in when you can.
I think we should have something called the first step. And just, if we could get people to take those first steps, it's like dropping, I call it the first domino. You know, you drop the first domino, the other dominoes drop. But it's just taking that first step. Thank you so much.